On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, when emergency funds run dry.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Shawn Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome George Corbello, your financial coach. How you doing, George?
I am doing well. Can I just say life is good? Life is grand. And can I just recommend folks, I just want to, kind of recommend my folks itself. If you have any questions, I have this network that I'm a part of, Accountable Network. Google us on Facebook. But this is a great, again, if you're ready to make that big step in regards to finance, because today's topic is all about, how to manage,
right,
or know where you are in your finances. Good financial coach like myself is there to help out, but we have the Accountable Network that gets you, if you don't want to talk to me right away, you want to talk to me, trust me, you want to do that.
You do want to talk to George.
But Accountable Network on Facebook, great group of individuals who can get you started if you have any questions. Just tell them that George Corbello sent you.
Nice. And we've got some questions that we're going to cover on today's episode that have actually come from our Patreon page. So that's kind of cool. We get to answer some patrons' questions. Yeah. But before we do that, so as this episode comes out, I'll actually be speaking at my kids' school for the Great American Teach-In. And it was funny, a couple of years ago when I went to show up to do it, they're like, "What do you do?" And I'm a bankruptcy attorney. "What's that?" "Well, when your parents can't pay for all the Christmas presents they're going to buy, have them come see me." So instead of trying to do something so morbid for kids, I brought my podcasting equipment. And I said, "Well, I'm an attorney, but I also have a podcast to support the law firm." And they're like, "Oh, great." So I pull out all the portable equipment and started recording all the kids. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can't release any of this because I don't have the parents' permission to record their kids.
There you go.
So I think I released a couple of years ago some of the stuff that I did with my boys because I had their mom's permission.
You're allowed.
Yeah, but the other stuff that I recorded with the other kids is either erased or somewhere in the bowels of the never-to-be-released part of the Crushing Debt Podcast. Who knows? But yeah, we've got, as I do this, we've got the Great American Teach-In going on as this week's episode is released. And next week is Thanksgiving.
Oh, what's any plans?
Yeah, I'm actually heading up to Tallahassee. So when the Florida State-Florida game is in Tallahassee, we all go up there for Thanksgiving. When it's in Gainesville, none of us will wear garnet and gold in Gainesville, so everybody comes to Tampa. But yeah, this year the game is in Tallahassee, so we're heading up there. Me, my wife, my kids, we're going to spend some time. My parents live up there, my sister, brother-in-law, niece, and my cousin, who lives here in the Tampa Bay area, is actually driving up there.
Oh, that's sweet.
Unfortunately, they're Gator fans, and
well, you can't save everybody.
They have tickets for the game, so that's why they're going up. But we get to spend Thanksgiving with them too, so that'll be cool.
Well, my plans itself, I think my wife and I with the kids, we're going to be heading up to North Carolina and Raleigh, North Carolina. We've got family. It's going to be a huge kind of like a family gathering. Grandpa and grandma, we're hoping because again they're pain in the butts. We're hoping that they're there, but it allows for all the kids, all the grandkids. So we're hoping it's a huge family gathering itself. As much as we like to take advantage that everyone's going to be there every day, but when we have the opportunities to get the families together, it's really a great feeling. So that's the plan we're going to be doing. I'll be doing some cigars and probably some of the recommended whiskeys that you say, but
nice.
That's what we'll be doing, other than maybe watching some football on that day and probably pigging out on turkey. I'm not a big fan of turkey, but I guess I'll do it for one day.
So one thing that I did, my first real Thanksgiving in Tallahassee, not when I was a student, but after I had graduated and we went back with my sister's family, fried turkey.
Oh, I love fried turkey.
I'd never had a fried turkey.
You've never.
You'll
never go back to the.
I have. I just hadn't to that point in my life.
Oh no, you people, if you haven't had fried turkey, it's first of all, be safe when cooking it because there is a lot of oil and
make sure it's thawed. You don't want to put it in there frozen. That would be bad.
Actually, you can Google or YouTube a lot of those videos because they are hilarious. No one hurt in the making of this turkey,
right?
But at the same time, yes. Oh my goodness! Like I had my first fried turkey probably 10 years. It's like never. I can never eat turkey. It's same. It's the best in the world.
Yeah. The other thing that I typically do because it's Florida State, I go buy gator tail.
There you go.
Once the turkey comes out, we deep fry the gator tail.
Nice.
So just a little.
Look at this guy.
Hey, it's only superstition if it doesn't work, right?
As long as the team wins, who cares?
Who cares? So, meanwhile, before we get into the real meat of what we're going to talk about, I do need to mention one of our sponsors, Mark Purvis. Been with us since the very, very, very beginning. He's our editor. He makes us sound good. He also has a website called legacyspotlight.com. So if you want to capture the stories, especially during Thanksgiving time, if you want to capture the story of previous generations for future generations.
If you could do the future, that'd be amazing. But go ahead.
If you can do the future, call me. I got a trademark deal I can run by you. But no, contact legacyspotlight.com. Go to contact Mark Purvis, a 20-year Emmy Award-winning videographer. He can help record those stories. He'll make it fun. So go ahead. Thanksgiving would be a great time to do it. But this week we wanted to talk about a story, website article that you had found, George, and then a couple of questions from patrons, but they all seem to interconnect. So This is a story on MarketWatch.com, and I'll link to the article in the show notes so you can read it. But basically, the title of the article, it's written by an author named Quentin Fottrell. Hopefully I say that right. Fottrell. And the title of the article, Living Paycheck to Paycheck Has Become the Norm. Inflation Takes Its Toll on American Finances as Emergency Funds Run Dry. Pretty cool article, I thought.
I got to say, it's cool in a sense of, where we are and the state of the nation. Obviously, we're hearing all the news in regards to rising prices, rising interest rates. What are people to do in these times itself? But we're starting to, feel the effects. COVID, obviously, and, what was done during those few years, we're still feeling the effects, and we're starting to we're still trying to understand exactly what those effects have been on our wallets and in our accounts. But we're starting to see, habits changing in regards to savings and again, that process of living paycheck to paycheck, which is makes me a little stressed when I think of it.
Yeah, basically the article cites some statistics. Middle income earners that say they're living paycheck to paycheck has gone up from 57% to 63%. So now 63% of middle income earners say they are living paycheck to paycheck. High income earners went up from 38% to 49%. So nearly half of all high income earners say they're living paycheck to paycheck. Now it'd be easy to say if you're a high income earner, just cut back on some of your expenses.
Yeah, what's the big deal? How is it? But you're making money,
so it shouldn't
be a problem itself. But the thing that's startling in all of this too, you're saying about 65% living paycheck to paycheck. I said that in September. That's up 60% from just a year ago.
Right.
That's what's. I mean, is it so different? In regards to, because I thought everything was getting back to normal, and we're like, what's happening here?
I've been saying for years, the only way to repay all the money that the federal government was giving out at the end of COVID there, and I'm not being political, and I'm not criticizing, that's what was necessary
you need to help people.
To keep the economy going.
Absolutely.
But really, the only way to pay that back is inflation. Mm-hmm. There's no other way to pay that back. And we've been so low for so long. I mean, how long were mortgage rates in the 3s and 4s? And now they're in the 7s, 6s or 7s, which still, I remember days when they were in the 10s and
double digits.
12s.
Right, exactly.
But I think inflation has to come hold, and I think the government has some plans to battle it, and I'm sure it'll be an issue. As we record this, or as this episode comes out, the elections will have already happened, the midterm elections, the November elections.
Whoever you want to win, just fill in your candidate. Go for it.
I saw an interesting, one of my favorite memes. It's a picture of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then Darth Vader, and then Jar Jar Binks. And it says,
well loved.
And it says what you think of your political candidate below Obi-Wan. What your opponent thinks of your political candidate under Darth Vader, your actual political candidate, Jar Jar Binks.
Well, if you're not into Star Wars, I'm sorry, but that's a pretty funny meme. It was
a pretty hilarious meme. And again, not being political, anyone who's listened to the show for any length of time knows that I have my own criticisms of government. So. More so the political process than anything else.
It's the process, exactly.
I like the article in that it goes into some into some detail about, emergency funds and saving up emergency funds and battling inflation and some of those other things it goes into.
Yeah, I mean, the other statistic that I saw in there as well, we know the importance of having an emergency fund, having it in place for those things that are going to just, again, life happens, we get that. But right now it says here 68% of people can say they can actually handle a $400 emergency. 68% of, so again, not only are 65% living paycheck to paycheck, if something were to happen, loss of job, an emergency could be as big as losing a job, right? But just 4 new tires could be an emergency.
This is an emergency. My TV is busted.
Well, that's a huge emergency.
So yeah, I mean we're relegated to watching TV on our iPads now. We can't watch TV or movies as a family. And I tongue in cheek, it's not an emergency, but at the same time, yeah, I do want a TV that the whole family can watch that works on a regular basis.
That makes I would say your kids would deem that an emergency.
They don't care. They're on their iPads. They don't care.
Well, it's that. Okay, so new norm there too. So
yeah, new
gotcha.
norm there too.
Gotcha.
But still, I want a TV. I need to watch. I don't want to watch football on my iPad. I want to watch football on the big screen. So. But yeah, I mean, how many people can cover if their TV breaks? If they need, we just had. I won't say how it happened, but the drywall in the garage where we park our cars ended up getting damaged. And I won't say it was because my wife drove too far and hit the wall, but the drywall, we needed to pay to buy the materials, to buy the supplies, to repair the drywall in the house. I mean, stuff happens from time to time. So you need to have a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of an emergency fund to cover that kind of stuff.
And again, a lot of people are going to be like, hey, I don't make enough. That's an ideal. But we're also seeing, as part of the statistics, as part of that too, is we're seeing people, they have multiple jobs. It's not like, I have the 9-to-5 job itself and that's making ends meet. We have more households that are, 2-family, 2-member families having jobs. So again, that has an impact on us too. We also have, people, again, more than one job that they're working through itself. So you have your 9-to-5, then you have your 5-to-7. You're doing Uber. You're doing, all of these other ways. We're doing our best to make ends meet and manage those things, but is this the new norm? Because I feel like it's going to be way too stressful.
But here's the other thing that I'll say too is that, how much do you want in your emergency fund? Do you want it to be $400, $600, $1,000? How much do you want it to be? At $400, that's only $33.33 a month. At $600, it's only $50 a month. So can you cut somewhere in your budget to generate $50 in the month to put in the emergency fund that you can't touch, and then at the end of the year you got $600? Even if you were to take that $600 and buy $400 worth of Christmas presents, you still got $600 at the end of the year. Can you do it through work? Can work split your paycheck and send 1% to this savings fund? I mean, $33 a month. How much is a thing of Starbucks coffee? Is what, $5?
Depending on which state, apparently, it could be as much as $9. But yeah.
How many you'd have to give up between 4 and 6 Starbucks a month in order to save $33?
And the problem is we know what we should be doing, but it goes back to the behavior, right? It's like, I know what I should be doing, but why is it that I still spend the money, or why is it that I'm not saving? We know why you should be, but why is it that's what's preventing people from actually doing it itself? And a lot of times it's, I need to justify this purchase. I need to justify having or doing this because it makes me happy. A lot of people, again, you drinking coffee 15 times. I don't drink coffee, so I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, now, again, alcohol, that's a different story. We can work there. But the reason why we're doing it, for me, I'm worried that, once again, we have too many jobs, too many hours in the day where we're trying to just get by. And we're using a lot of these things itself to just make us feel better. Well, I can't survive if I don't have the coffee. And I think that's where it's like, okay, there's a balance between, having a savings should be just as important than that cup of coffee.
And you can. I'm a coffee drinker, but you can survive without coffee. It is absolutely possible. Instead of Starbucks, go buy a Keurig. Or make it at home, brew it at home, and you'll save that Starbucks money every month.
See, but those are all good tips. I love the one that you mentioned, though, in regards to automated. most of us, we automate our 401ks if we're doing for retirement or anything like that. If you don't see the money go into your checking account, the one that you use to pay your bills, and you just say, hey, you're right, $5 every time I get paid. Start with something, $5, and you push it in and automate it. For me, that you lose that sense of this is, I actually have to do something. No, the bank already put it in the account. It's there. It's out of sight, out of mind, and you basically are starting your process. So I love the tip of just automate it, and I guarantee you'll start there.
It's not something you're having to do. It's
Right.
something that's just so it's not in your account to move, so you're not going to miss it when it's gone.
Exactly, and we'll always justify some kind of other reason not to put that money into the savings account. We do it. We all have done it.
No, we're human. We're human. But I also wanted to we got some questions that I wanted to go over as well. So a couple of good questions. We kind of grouped them all together because they all deal with this same kind of topic. So one of them is, what are some ways to avoid getting into debt?
Okay, that's
it's an easy question.
That's an easy question. So obviously the easiest answer is don't spend more than you make.
Exactly.
That's the easiest answer I can give you. But how do you know that on a daily basis? What's your budget? For me, having a plan each month of I'm going to make this amount of money. Here's where all the money is going. Being intentional with that allows you to be able to say, I don't want to spend more than I make. That's one thing. Don't use credit cards as a mean to actually, live, each day. Because that's the other thing. We kind of I'll use the credit card and I'll get the groceries and all that. But if you don't have a budget to say I'm going to pay that credit card each month, that's an easy way to accrue debt quickly.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's along the same lines. If you don't have the credit cards in your wallet, you're not going to be tempted to use them to buy stuff. If you do use the credit card, make sure it's something that you could afford. In other words, you're choosing to use the credit card because you get points, but you could just as easily put it on your debit card.
Yes.
Or you're choosing to, or if, let's say there's an emergency that comes up and you need to use the credit card, then use it, but just have a plan on how quickly you're going to be able to pay it back. Because the longer you wait to pay it back, the more interest that accrues, the further into debt you could potentially become. So I don't really carry. I carry the law firm credit card and I carry my debit card in my wallet. And that's about it, because if the credit cards aren't in my wallet, I'm not tempted to spend them.
Makes sense. I do carry the credit card itself, but I'm afraid of, again, accruing the debt. The other thing, we talked about interest rates going up, all of these kind of things. Interest rates for a lot of those credit cards, we probably haven't looked at them. Again, most of us don't go back and go, but they're in the 20s, 25, 29. They're teetering 30%. So when inflation also, all these rates are going up itself, that's where you're feeding oh, shoot, I need to have more of a minimum payment,
right? Because
I got to cover this new interest that the company is making now off of me.
Right.
I'm a little bit more cautious of using those credit cards.
Yeah. So I think that's my biggest point, is just don't use the cards. Or if you do, make sure you can afford to pay them off when the statement comes in.
Each month, put it in the budget.
Yeah. Here's another one. And I don't know that I quite understand, but the question is how to have people help you get out of debt. And my gut reaction to that is, well, I give a free consultation.
Me too.
So, come to us. But I think even going maybe behind that question is, either ask for help from the banks, ask for help from the creditors. I mean, interest rates are pushing 30%, but maybe if you've been paying on time forever, and you call the credit card company and you say, look, I've hit a rough patch, maybe the credit card company lowers the interest rate temporarily.
That's all great ideas. I think most of us, that's probably the first move that we do. I look at it too, like people who can help you. You're right. Consultation, hey, have a coach, have a lawyer kind of help you out and those kind of things. I think it's great. Who in your family can help you in having that conversation? The hardest conversation most of us can have is about money.
Yeah.
Again, love is a different show.
Right.
But when it comes to money, I think it's a hard conversation to be like, hey, even with our spouses, hey spouse, I'm not really good with money. Let's have a conversation, because we feel like there's this judgment, there's an emotional tie to it. but finding someone who you can trust to have that conversation to make sure that you're not having this feeling of being alone.
Yeah.
Oh, I look at this mess that I'm in, or the situation that I'm in, and I have no one to connect with.
You don't necessarily have to call your buddy and say, hey, I need a loan, but maybe call your buddy and talk to him about it.
Well, Shawn, is that an option with you? Because I got your number too. But I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I got
continue.
lots of friends. It's not an option with me, but I can introduce you to some of my friends.
There you go.
Or maybe your spouse is better at dealing with money than you are, and you just don't know it because you're too afraid to bring up that conversation. But I know between me and my wife, I would think I'm probably the better one at money, since this is what I do day in and day out. And I remember, and I told this story when we had Dr. Virgie on talking about medical debt, where I was able to negotiate down some of my wife's medical debt when we had our second son. And I'll never forget when I told my wife that I was able to negotiate it away, she looked at me and said, how did you do that? I'm like, honey, you know what I do for a living, right?
Magic.
I just did it for us instead of someone else.
Exactly.
So, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to your spouse about it. And maybe your spouse would be willing to help out, even if you might be the better one at dealing with debt. My wife just went through something, and so instead of making her feel bad and saying, give it to me and let me negotiate it, I coached her on how to negotiate it. And we had a $900 bill come in that she negotiated down to $400.
Nice.
Now, my emergency savings is gone because it was $400.
That's okay. I doubt it's that small, but that's okay. I hear you.
But you see how I linked to the beginning of the show.
I appreciate. We all appreciate that.
So
thank you, sir.
But no, we negotiated it down from 900 to 400. And so, and I coached her on
and
how
those
to
are
do it.
options. People don't know that. They just feel like, oh, well, it's got to be this. But research, talk to people. Again, talking to the professionals, people who know how to manage these kind of things, allow you to kind of see what options are there. Yes, you can Google it. There's probably information about how to manage these things. But for me, it's the more knowledge you have, the better you can position yourself to manage these things.
Exactly. So the last question that we got here, what are some signs that I might be nearing bankruptcy?
Well, my friend, I think that is all you.
Well, I will take it. Sometimes it's the one-off. It's the, oh my gosh, I got in a car accident, I'm getting sued.
Right.
Or oh my gosh, I had this medical issue and I now got 6 figures in debt. Sometimes it's that. And for those situations, it's really just have your emergency funds, try to negotiate it. I mean, some of that stuff may just be unavoidable.
Right.
I lost my job. I got a divorce.
Yeah.
Some of those things that cause bankruptcy are just frankly unavoidable.
I mean, life-changing events that
Right.
remind us that, again, a lot of us too with COVID, were not prepared for that. Small business owners as well as personal folks, people who were losing their jobs at that point in the beginning of the pandemic, really didn't have the finance. It was a wake-up call for some
Right.
of us to go, holy cow, how am I going to pay rent if I'm not, waitressing or at the restaurant or doing any of these kind of things? So the pivot, there was real situations that we had to deal with as part of those kind of life-changing events. I'd like to avoid them in that sense of like, let's be more prepared in those
Right.
situations, but sometimes we need that life call to say and remind us, hey, we're in this situation. What do we do next in regards to that?
But I think the biggest sign outside of that just random, stuff happens.
Yeah.
I think the biggest sign is robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yes.
In other words, the people that jump from zero interest card to zero interest card.
Yes.
So I'm gonna take this zero interest card and I'm gonna take the balance and shift it over to that zero balance card. But then the problem becomes the first zero balance card that interest has now started to tick on, they shift it to the other zero interest card, but then they run up the first card.
Yes.
So you had $5,000 on the first card, you shift it to a second card at 0% interest, but then you run up the $5,000 on the first card, and now you got $10,000 in debt. You do that 4, 5, 6, 7 times, now you're easily 5 figures, near 6 figures in debt. That kind of stuff. It's like you said, overspending. Understand your budget.
Yes.
If you've got more money coming in than you have, less money coming in than going out, that could be a sign.
That's another sign.
If you don't slow it down, if you don't do something to your budget, you could be facing a bankruptcy.
That's it. You have to know where's your money going each month. And I think a lot of us it's hard to like, because that's a reality check. It's something that it's scary.
Yeah.
It's
an ego check.
Well, it's for most of us it can be, and that's a good one. Look at that, Shawn from the corner.
Every once in a while, I get a nugget.
That's a good one. But I agree with you there, man. It's sometimes we have to set the ego at the door, leave it at the door itself, because that prevents us from having the conversations that are necessary, dealing with the situations head on. If it's too late in the game itself, you're right. Then bankruptcy might be one of the options we might have to take, because it's not just, I'll just make more money and then I'll be able to, basically pay off the debt itself. It might be too far along. It's that even making more money might be too late for that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not, let's put it like this, if you're not paying the bills on time or not paying them at all, you're probably, me is another warning sign that there's something there. Yeah, that's another
warning sign of not paying them or not paying them on time. Yeah, that could be another issue. But I think there as well, bankruptcy is not something to be scared of. Bankruptcy is something that we can possibly, I was trying to decide if I wanted to say probably or possibly, and I tried to make some
you said them both, so we're good now.
Of that word. Maybe it can be avoided. And so that's another thing that we can talk about. Maybe there are other options to get rid of the debt rather than bankruptcy. And so reach out and talk to somebody about it. And, if you think you're nearing that cliff, let me know, and we can kick around some other ideas. George can help you kick around some other ideas. I can
get the plan together once Shawn takes care of the situation.
Exactly.
I like that.
So thank you to our Patreon community. I don't know what we're going to call them. Crushing debtors.
The Yesners.
I don't know. We'll think of a name later. Maybe one of you will get a free month if you think of a free Patreon name. But
I like that.
But yeah, we do want to continue to promote the Patreon page. So thank you, huge thank you if you're listening to today's show on whatever podcast player you're listening on. We really, really appreciate it. If you want to give a little bit more, that's what the Patreon page is for. It does cost us a few bucks to produce the show, aside from what our sponsors give us. And so,
thank you, sponsors.
Yeah, so being a patron helps to offset even some of those costs as well.
Right.
Speaking of and you can find the Patreon page on Patreon and just search Crushing Debt. Speaking of sponsors, I do also have to talk about Sam Cohen, our longtime listener, supporter, and friend, who writes malpractice insurance for attorneys and title companies all over the country. So if you are a new or startup attorney or title company, or even if you're an existing attorney or title company and you want to comparison shop what you've got now to what Sam can provide, he'll do that for free. Sam at attorneysfirst.com or attorneysfirst.com. Even if you've had a claim in the past, Sam can look into options for you. It may not be the cheapest option, may not be the cheapest premium, but he has options to get you insurance, even if there's been an issue in the past. Also want to mention all of our social media channels. You can find Yesner Law all over social media. Also, Curbelo Financial all over social media, especially on TikTok.
Nice. I'm still dancing.
Are we going to do any turkey videos this year?
I think now that you put it into the universe, I will have to. So yes. Now maybe I'll put a turkey head on my head. Okay, can't put all the ideas here now.
No.
So, but yes, something. I imagine my wife will embarrass me somehow. So we're good.
Either embarrass you or veto some of those ideas, probably.
Well, she is president.
There you go. There you go. So, I don't know. I put you on the spot last week. You want to try it this week?
All right. So, see, now I'm on the spot. No, go ahead, do it. You see, now I can't. Oh, man. There you go.
One day he'll get it
One
without...
day, people.
Hey,
I had it like a few weeks ago. But
don't worry. It took me a while. I kept screwing it up all the time. So, when you want more money at the end of the month than month at the end of the money, that's what this show is all about. And so we really, really do appreciate all of you listening. Next week's episode will be a What We're Thankful For episode, our annual Thanksgiving episode. But I think that'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, and we'll talk to you in next week's episode.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Shawn or connect with us on social media. Shawn Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.